a bit of a loose end, if I'm honest, and I wasn't sure what to do. But then I remembered an old game I used to play. I fished it out, and it transpires it's perfect because it's called Lockdown. It seems like it's relevant. So the problem is instructions gone, no tutorials on YouTube or anything like that. So I thought I'd do one. Obviously you get the sanitizer things. These are for the expansion pack, which I don't have, so we're not going to use those. You get the pieces, which are obviously the currency of the game is kind of because that's what you want to get hold of really when you're in lockdown. And then we have the deck. You get about, I don't know, 70 or 80 cards in here. The first thing you get are the 3 predicament cards. You could be living with family, living with partner, which must be nice, or terribly, terribly alone. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frustration cards. You don't want to get these. You don't want to get these. These indicate you're not doing a good job playing the game of lockdown. But there are ways you can avoid getting them. You also have these COVID cards. These are definitely what you don't want to get. You can't tell that someone's, because often asymptomatic, so it's quite hard. So I'm going to play a few rounds just to kind of give you because I think that's probably the best way to learn. Someone plays a working from home card. Fine, not a problem with that. But then someone else on top of that says, haha, but you can't access the server. And that's problematic. That, as you can see by the kind of, the icon could lead to a frustration card, which we don't want. But what happens if you have this card? Now it's the same exact card, it's just a different kind of interpretation, which is can't access. It's just a way of looking at things. So that's one kind of element of gameplay. Obviously that person probably would get again, I don't know the actual number, but there would be some. If you're living with family or a partner, birthday, absolutely fine. You're not going to run into any issues. If you're living obviously alone, again there could be problems, which then could lead to just a downward spiral. Just really mad descent. Obviously you avoid that if you're living with family. You're probably going to have a nice birthday, but the problem is you might have to homeschool. So again, different ways of dealing with it. Baking. This is a very simple round of lockdown. Makes sense. But then someone else might play more baking. And the problem is this can lead directly to be honest, baking quite rather, actually, and if we're being honest, probably too much, too much. That's just, and then just please stop, and then we have this cannot go on. Player 1 is living alone and to avoid frustration spends time gaming. However, this is not by any means a strong play. Gaming is solitary and as such the rules that create a loneliness card can be played. Unluckily for player 1, this is exactly what happens. Yet undeterred, player 1 mobilises and counters with online gaming, successfully winning the round. But let's imagine for a second that we play the same card on the living with family. You would have thought absolutely fine, but in this case, online gaming can be countered. For if the household has a slow internet connection and the rest of the family are watching Netflix, well that can lead directly to buffering, which in turn produces the much maligned frustration card, game set match. So that's a point at which you're safe if you're living alone. I mean, obviously probably not happy, but safe. Living with a partner, that's a fairly good card to get, obviously, because you're probably going to get some, and then, but there's a possibility of, and that's not good. That's going to be problematic when you're living together. Obviously, if you're living alone, you might very much miss that person. But then again, you could play long distance. That's going to keep you away from frustration. You could also, if you're not with anyone, you could just do group chat. That's good. Online dating, phone, that's good. All those things are going to prevent you from solitude. But this is the thing. Even if you get the solitude card, you could pretty much follow that up. I mean, it's essentially the same. It's pretty like this. It's just a different. Again, it's a matter of perspective, really. A lot of this game. And this is the thing, all you're doing, whether you're living with a partner, living with family, or living alone, all you're doing in this game is really trying to avoid the frustration cards and trying to avoid the COVID cards. And you can do that in many, many ways. So for instance, wine at lunch. Who says that's, what? Just wine at, just a little bit of wine at lunch. Just a cheeky glass of wine at lunch. That's fine, just a cheeky glass. And then, what's wrong with that? What's wrong? And obviously, once, because you've had a couple, you may as well, finish, and then, but then the problem is that then you get, who says it's wrong? You just haven't, crack open another, because you have, well, yes, what of it? The people just judgmental people, and don't look at me! Just look at me! And then there's this kind of, I regret nothing. I regret nothing. But then there are things that I regret. That, obviously, if you're living with someone, can lead to a frustration. Obviously, if you're living alone, that's probably going to be okay. Let's say someone does end up playing a COVID card into your midst. One of the things you can do is, obviously, you can play one of the protection cards. Unfortunately, there are precious few of these. The game makers, I think, neglected to kind of plan ahead, but it is what it is. You can also, someone plays the COVID card, you could play a bailout, you could also, that's good, but then someone could amplify the COVID with a fake news, which is not, that's really going to create problems for you. So you can do the social distancing, but if someone plays a COVID card, and then they also have this card, then you are, I'll be honest, the worst card in the game, there's very little you can do apart from kind of just hope. Because if someone adds COVID to what is, sheer, just complete incompetence, things are not going to go well. There are obviously other ways you can use the time. You don't have to necessarily spend it in solitude or drinking. You could do that. And obviously, but this is the thing, is that there are a number of these cards. The problem is, if you're living with family, it's quite hard to get away with that, I think. Because it's going to be like, I'd worry that you might be, and then if you're living with a partner, I think it's going to be frowned upon, isn't it? If you're living with a partner, it's probably just not gonna reflect well upon you if you're just like, I'm just gonna. However, if you're living alone, one of the because there aren't many benefits, but you can just keep. If you're living alone. In fact, it's a way of, and you can really get away with spending a lot of the game just because they supply a lot. This actually makes, to be honest, this is probably why we have the panic button, because that, is what we, and then, so, yeah, there are, sometimes too much. So that's Lockdown. That's Lockdown, the game. I hope you enjoyed this little kind of rundown of it, and I hope this helps anyone out there who wants to play. That's Lockdown, the game. Thanks for watching, everyone.